I think we have well-developed political parties. Now, when we don't have well-developed political parties, the chief executive will have tremendous difficulty running the government without party support, a strong party support. And he or she will be continuously doing deals with various parties, as our chief executive is doing now. Now, how would you solve this problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for this very interesting problem. I mean, democracy has a short history in Hong Kong, but I think we do have pretty well organized parties. Mr. Zheng's party is one. We also have the Democrat Party. They have quite different platforms, you know. But what we don't have is sufficient middle-class participation in party politics. You know, in Hong Kong, only half the population are registered voters. In a normal election, about half turn out to vote. In a by-election, normally about 30-odd%. There is not enough middle-class interest in participating, even in the sense of registering as voters, keeping abreast of political developments and voting, let alone joining a party and standing as candidates. It takes time, you know. I would really like to encourage more middle-class participation. The chief executive is handicapped by, I think, number one, his small popular mandate. You know. He is commonly decried as elected by a small circle. And he doesn't have his own party. I think he gets some support from Mr. Zheng's party, doesn't he? You know? But I don't know who's doing who's bidding. You know? For example, the chief executive, contrary to his traditional free market philosophy, seems to be supporting minimum wage legislation, apparently buying into the philosophy of some of his supporters. So unlike the Western democracies, where you do not have a leader emerging from parties, it's not clear who's doing, who's bidding, and we don't have a really strong executive-led government until we have a democratically elected chief with his or her own party support. That's my honest opinion.
Steve Vines, please.
Hi, Steve Vines. Mrs. Ip, I'm not, to use your infamous categorization of people not allowed to fully participate in the debate. I'm not a taxi driver, a waiter, or even an employee of McDonald's, which I believe are the people you said couldn't fully participate in the Article 23 debacle. But I am interested in your fantastically nostalgic views of autocratic government in Hong Kong. And I'd like to suggest to you that your proposal for the nomination of the chief executive is a proposal for the imposition of the tyranny of the minority as opposed to the will of the majority. Because essentially, what you're proposing is to put into place a system whereby a very, very small number of people can block the nomination of a candidate, yet there is no mechanism in there for the majority view to be expressed. Now, this is the system, for obvious reasons, doesn't exist in any democratic society whatsoever. There must be a reason for this, and perhaps you could explain why that is so.
Steve, thank you for this thought-provoking question. But you are absolutely right, this sort of nominating mechanism does not exist in the Western democracy, but it exists in the basic law. Unfortunately, it's a reality we have to come to terms with, you know, because Hong Kong is not an independent country. We can't build a representative system like one that you normally found in an independent country. We have to build it in accordance with the provisions of the basic law. And the basic law does stipulate the requirement that the CE has to be nominated by a broadly representative nominating committee. So it means that all 4 sections of the committee, assuming there will continue to be the current 4 sections, should be given their say. I'm afraid that's our constitutional reality, and that's my reading of it.
Back here, please. And then
follow up on that question, because universal suffrage and majority rule are rather simple, transparent concepts. We know what we're talking about. And so the burden is on those who oppose that principle to come up with justification for giving a minority extra voting power. And I want to give an example of where that leads us. Hong Kong has a great problem of air pollution, and bills keep coming before the legislature to deal with this problem, to clean up the air. And they pass by a majority of the votes of the democratically elected legislators, and then are defeated by a small group of special interest functional constituency legislators, because you have to win in both sides of the legislature. And legislators, functional constituency legislators representing a very small number of citizens are in a position to defeat these efforts to clean up the air. Now it seems to me that the burden is on you to persuade us that, whether we're talking about the legislature or the chief executive, that this great power in the hands of a small number of people is justified.
Thank you for the question. Responding to the first part, I think Mr. Zhang Yuxing could correct me if I'm wrong. When it comes to our legislative process, only members' amendments need to clear votes by both categories of members, geographically based and functional constituency return members. Government-sponsored amendments don't need to do that. So if you could get the government to accept your proposals, any legislative amendment doesn't need to clear both categories. But you see, my proposal is not talking about giving a minority the final say. The rule is very fair, and because it applies to everybody. Any candidate to stand as chief executive would need 10% support from each of the 4 sections of the committee. So it means it requires the candidate to be broad-minded and try to win support from all 4 sectors of the nominating committee. So to that extent, it's, I think, a reasonable system.